Okay, we're recording. Hello, this is Alejandro, and this is going to be my first attempt at a podcast. These podcasts are going to be called Letters to Penny, and these letters to Penny, they're basically a direct message to Penny in the future. If she ever gets to see these, that would be awesome. It could be me sharing it with her. It could be somebody else sharing it with her if something happens to me before then. But she could even see them now. It's just I'm doing it to kind of preserve the memory and kind of give her. I think I am. Let me double check. Am I live? Yes, I'm on the right account. Okay, so these videos, they're going to be, like I said, a direct message to Penelope, and I am recording the audio separately on this microphone that goes onto the device directly underneath the iPhone that I'm recording this onto, so that I can save it as a podcast as well. And this first episode is going to be everything that I know about your mom from my perspective and what I've heard from her family, and from whatever sources I have as much as I can. And I think it would be a kind of good way to be able to share this in case anything happens to me, or just for us to share it together in the future. And also, I'm kind of, as time goes on, I forget more and more of it, so I also want to preserve it for that reason. In particular, about your mom, it is kind of a, yeah, she, well, I guess we can start off there. So she was born in 1983, and today would have been her 35th birthday. And um, she passed away on August 7th, 2013. So that was 3 months after you were born, Penelope. And as she was growing up as a kid, she had a mom and dad until she was about 5. I think it was 5. It might have been 4. Her dad passed away when he was when she was 4 or 5, and for the rest of her young childhood, she was raised by her mom alone. Later on, she um, let's try that. Sorry, the recording doesn't seem to want to record. Well, maybe I'll just get the audio off the camera. But the let's see if I can stop it. No, something's wrong with the recorder. Anyways, so the can I fix this? Maybe. Yeah, it's recording again. Okay. So the yeah, when she was 4 or 5 years old, she passed her dad passed away, and she um, was raised by her mom for the rest of her young childhood. Later on, her mom ended up marrying her husband, and later on she knew him as her dad and treated him and felt that he was her dad. So that is kind of later on, as she became a teenager and through her adulthood, she always felt that he was always her dad. Um, then, so uh, from her early childhood, I really don't know much. So if somebody else is watching that knows, maybe her sisters, or her sister, her brother, her mom, because I know they watched a channel occasionally. So if you guys know, let me know down in the comments more stuff about her childhood, because I really don't know much about her early childhood. I know a little bit, so I know that at times you guys, they didn't have much money, so there was a period of time where they actually lived on the beach, and they actually owned a van, and they would be camping on the beach on their for her young childhood, and she actually didn't see it as a bad thing. She was kind of young enough where it was like an adventure for her every day. I know talking to her mom, she was very kind of worried and kind of sad about having to go through all that. But as a kid, Kristen actually kind of enjoyed it and she saw it as an adventure. So that was a fun time for her, being able to live on the beach and experience that every single day and evening, night. And she got to see the sunset in California, and every day, every evening when she went to bed. So that was that. The next thing that I know is when she became a young teenager, she became. She found out. Well, I don't know if she was quite a teenager. I know she was an adolescent though. She went into diabetic coma, and that's when she found out that she was type 1 diabetic. I know it was like she was in the coma for a few days to a couple weeks. And she told me that when she was in the coma, that there was one thing that she remembers before she woke up. She remembers a doorway, a bright doorway, and seeing her dad in the doorway with somebody else. The other person was really bright. She couldn't tell who it was, but she believes all the way through her life that that was God together with her dad. And um, she desperately tried to get through the doorway to be with them, but they wouldn't let her. They told her that there was something that she had left to do in her life. And um, with that kind of element, when she woke up, they didn't tell her when before she woke up, but she said that she knew like what that one thing that she had left to do with her life, and she was supposed to have a child, and that ended up being you, Penelope. So Penelope, she woke up and she kind of went through all the stresses of kind of teenagehood and things like that, kind of like normal kids. But there was some kind of interesting stories that went along with her teenage years because she was diabetic, so she needed to kind of learn how to cope with those kind of things, learn how to measure her blood sugar, make sure that she kept that all in balance and things like that. Then also, I know that she went one summer to visit her grandparents um, in Big Bear, California, and they owned a pizza restaurant there, and she wanted to spend the summer there with them. And there's kind of like this element in her life where I've heard a whole bunch of different stories from different perspectives at this point in her life. So I kind of I'm getting all the information and telling it the best way that I can because um, and putting more weight on what Kristen told me because that's who I believe the most. So Chris, when she went over to her grandmother's house, she um, her grandmother got her mom to write a letter for her saying that she can take her to the doctor and that if anything happens, she can take care of her and things like that. And her grandmother took that opportunity, from my understanding, and took it to the court to actually get custody of her and say that she couldn't, her mom couldn't take care of her and that she was passing her on to her, um, which her mom didn't do. Kristen says that she didn't, and her mom says that she didn't. Later on, years later, because her mom was sending her letters at her grandmother's house, and her grandmother was hiding them and never let them get to her. She actually would say, does not live here, return to sender, if I'm not mistaken. But they would go back to her mom, and her mom had the stack of letters and showed kind of all the postage stamps and the all the information to kind of show, yeah, I was trying to communicate with you. I didn't have money. I couldn't get over there. But she ended up staying with her grandma for several years. And with that um, kind of within that time, she thought that she was abandoned from her mom, but her mom was actually trying to get a hold of her and trying to get back to her, but she didn't know exactly where in Big Bear she was, and like I said, she didn't have much money at the time, so and she lived in Arizona at the time, so getting there and being able to kind of figure that out, she couldn't do on her own. Eventually, she was able to do it, but it took a couple years, from my understanding. Um, but with that going on, she actually, her grandfather, she really loved him, and he passed away while they were living there. She was living there, so. But she has completely fond memories of her grandfather and that he was the greatest guy. She actually says that I reminded her a lot of him. So I don't know what that says, but she did say that I reminded her a lot of him. Um, then they also owned a pizza restaurant, which Kristen at the time didn't like, but when she looked back on it, she actually really enjoyed being able to work and spend a lot of time at the pizza restaurant, and she actually learned a lot, and she gained a passion for cooking and culinary work and that kind of stuff. And that stayed with her for the rest of her life because she loved cooking and being in the kitchen and things like that. It was something that was a hobby of hers that she truly enjoyed. Um, she was still a teenager during this time, and one of the things that she told me that ends up kind of affecting her health wise a lot and mentally as a teenager. I mean, everything ends up being her decision. So she decided to do everything from this point. But she tells me that she was teased a lot from her grandmother because of her weight, and she would pinch her on the sides of her stomach going up and down the stairs, saying, um, fatty, 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 and kind of chasing her and teasing her like that. And I don't know if that was malicious or anything like that, but in Kristen's mind, it was that teasing really kind of affected her, and she really felt conscious about her weight all the time. So there's a condition that some diabetics get, especially through the teenage years, where they become bulimic and they actually manipulate their blood sugar to control their weight. So, and that is actually really dangerous for your health. And but she was doing that because she can drastically control and lose weight by manipulating her blood sugar and also not eating, being bulimic, and that kind of stuff. So those health issues kind of through her teenage years actually, even after she stopped, after she was in her 20s, actually became really deep rooted into like her. So she had weak teeth, weak bones, and things like that, which caused future health issues. Um, After that, in her 20s, again, another time of her life where I don't know much because I met your mom when she was after 25, maybe 26, something like that. Um, 25, 26, around that age. So I don't know much of her early 20s, but in her mid 20s, I met her when she was at Platt College and she was studying graphic design. At that point, I was actually a professor at the college there. I was teaching in the 3D digital design program, so I wasn't teaching in the program that she was in, but I was a teacher there at the university. Although me and your mom were actually only 6 months apart, so I just started college when I was 15, so I was really far ahead education-wise because of that. But that's a different story. The um, so uh, I did teach a couple of her classes, but at that point we weren't dating. We had no inkling of dating or anything like that. Actually, one of her friends tells me that she used to tell her all the time that, hey, you should hit on the professor and try to get a good grade out of this class. And later on, we would joke around because I never failed her, but I did give her a C in a couple of the classes that she took with me. But she ended up graduating with her associate's degree in graphic design, and she went to go to, um, yeah, she graduated and left, and I didn't see her for months, a year, something like that. And later on, we saw her at a mutual friend's birthday party. A minute, I'm recording. I see. Penny just walked in. I see. I'm recording something for you, Penny. Do you want to say hi really quick? Yeah. So that way you can remember? Say hi.
Hi.
This is for you in the future.
Okay.
Okay? You gonna go finish watching TV?
Yeah.
Okay. See you later.
I love you, Dad.
Oh, I love you too. Close the door, please. Thank you.
I love you.
I love you too. Sorry about the interruption, but I think she'll like to hear that in the future, so I'm going to leave that in. Let me get a little bit of water because it's summer and it's really hot in here. So, yeah, there was like about a year after she graduated, a mutual friend of ours had a birthday party, and we reunited at that birthday party. And at that point, we started dating. We dated for maybe a year and a half, and then we got engaged, and we were engaged for another year and a half. Until we got married. So during that time when we were dating and we were engaged, actually she moved in with me because I owned my own, or not owned, but I rented an apartment at the time, and she moved in with me within a month of us starting dating. And then in the within so we moved in together, and like I said, it was about a year and a half before we got engaged. And I'm sure there's records of when we got engaged somewhere in Facebook. So we'll look that up, and I'll put that in the show notes at some point. So we originally planned a wedding, and that one actually didn't work out because she got sick and she ended up being in the hospital. She was hospitalized for over 3 months, and she ended up being in long-term care. What ended up happening was that she had pancreatitis. Although at the beginning they didn't know what was going on. They actually thought that she was relapsing into bulimia and all that kind of stuff. But she couldn't keep anything down because of the pancreatitis, and it was actually painful for her to eat anything. And it took them like almost 2.5 months to figure that out. Once they did, they were able to help her out and get through it. But that was a really tough time for her. We did postpone the wedding by a few months because of that. We were supposed to get married in November, and I wrote down some dates so that I can make sure that I remember, because it's been a long time and we haven't celebrated our anniversary or anything like that. So we actually got married on March 10th, 2012. So that was almost a year before you were born. So we didn't get married because you got pregnant with you or anything. We actually were married, and then we spent time together. And at this point, Christin was actually not able, or the doctors told us at least, that she wasn't able to have children because she had a menstrual cycle for years and years already. And the doctor said because of everything that's been going on with her body and everything, that she wouldn't be able to have children. And that was devastating to her, but she kind of came to terms to that because she felt that she couldn't, there was nothing she could do about it. So me and her, we actually spent a lot of time having fun. We actually and just because we wanted to be healthier, we started eating better, we started exercising regularly, we had a personal trainer. And I think during this time, because of all the exercise and eating well, her body started getting like much stronger and better. It's like from what people have told me and from my experience, like she was healthier than I had ever seen her and more kind of energetic and uh, happy and things like that. But people that have known her whole life said that she never seemed that um, excited and lively in her whole life until that point. So while all that happens, and I strongly feel like the health, the eating, the exercise got her to the point where she could actually have a baby. She never had a menstrual cycle, but she immediately got pregnant with Penelope, Christin. Christin got pregnant, and we had you. When we found out she was pregnant, um, Christin actually had a few names in her mind from childhood that she wanted to name her baby, and that night we ended up having dinner. We had steak, I believe, and then we went to go watch a movie. The movie we ended up going to go see was Wreck-It Ralph. Later on, we discussed baby names and things like that, and I felt that it'd be kind of cool to name her after something like a name that wasn't someone that we knew or some like kind of a passed down name, so that way she can start her own traditions, her own legacy, basically. And what we kind of started talking about and we're excited about was the character in the movie Wreck-It Ralph. So we actually named her after Penelope von Sweets, although we thought Penelope was a little weird and people would get confused, and because it's not as common of a name. So we changed it to Penelope, so that way it would be kind of more of a mainstream name and people wouldn't get confused. But the origin of her name was the character from Wreck-It Ralph, Penelope von Sweets. So from the point that we found out that Christin was pregnant, we actually, she was in high risk pregnancy right from the beginning. They wanted to make sure she was like in weekly doctor's meetings and making sure that everything was going right, checking all her vitals, checking on the baby, Penelope, and making sure that everything was going smoothly. And through most of it, everything was going smoothly. And at about 25 weeks, they noticed that Penelope stopped growing. So Penny stopped growing inside of your mom, and also her kidneys started failing. So not Penelope's, but Christin's kidneys started failing. And they said that they were going to need to do dialysis, but that was dangerous while she was pregnant, and they needed to make sure that she got through the pregnancy. So they hospitalized her at that point, and they wanted to make sure that she was with fluids and that she had everything that she needed, rested completely. And at 30 weeks, and they were actually preparing just in case they needed to do an emergency C-section, and they were giving her steroids to make sure that Penelope was strong enough so that she can breathe on her own if she had to do an emergency C-section early, which they did. She had an emergency C-section um, on your birthday, May 8th, 2013. And Penny, you were born at 30 weeks, and you were 2 pounds 3 ounces, and you were tiny. You like from head to toe, you would fit from palm to palm right here in my hands. So you were very tiny, but you were a very cute baby. Even from the beginning, like everybody was saying that you were super cute, even though you were so tiny. So with when you were born in the emergency, well, not emergency room, but an operation room. So it wasn't like a normal maternity area, because you went straight into the NICU to make sure that everything was okay with you. And your mom went straight to the ICU. And you guys actually didn't get to directly see each other for another couple days. Your mom and your mom saw a photo of you right away because the doctor took a picture with their phone and showed it to her, but she didn't get to hold you or see you until 2 days later. And we did put the picture of your mom with you inside of your incubator, although you didn't need any oxygen or anything like that, but you did have, I forget what it's called, but the orange color at the skin where you need UV rays and things like that. So um, they had you in the incubator to be able to give you the UV rays. And there's some photos where you have kind of like the sleeping mask on because it would they wanted to protect your eyes. Um, but the steroids that they gave you and your mom actually helped out because you didn't need a respirator. You were able to breathe on your own. You were a really strong baby. Even before we left the NICU, you were actually like standing up. You were like a preemie baby standing on your 2 feet, like obviously with me holding your hands, but you were supporting yourself, which was amazing. Everybody was like amazed in that. Um, I remember that the nurses there at Loma Linda Hospital, they were amazing, and they actually would like carrying you and parading you around to all the other areas where the babies were because me and your mom would always dress you in very cute dresses and things like that, and you were really pretty, so they were like whatever nurse got you for that night was excited to be able to get you, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I got Penelope." They were really excited about it. So after a couple days, your mom got out of the or didn't get out of the ICU. It took about 2 weeks before she got completely out of the ICU, but they let her do little trips down to the NICU to be able to see you because of the situation. They knew that she was not feeling well and that she just had you, and they wanted you guys to be able to bond and have time together. So even though she was weak, she'd spend an hour or two every day coming down, and I'd help her. I'd come down and get with a wheelchair and transfer her from the ICU down to the NICU. About a month after you were born and doing that for another for about a month, she was released, and we started doing dialysis with her at the home. They trained us and they showed us how to go through the whole process of doing dialysis, and that was a lot of learning. But everything was like super clean and sterile in the house, and we had to make sure everything was done perfectly so that way she wouldn't get an infection or anything like that. Um, and then shortly after that, actually work was amazing. At that time I was working at the Art Institute. They gave me free time so that I can spend time learning that and be with your mom and be with you. And then I did start working shortly, about like a month and a half afterwards again. Um, and then basically I was going to work, coming to the hospital, and I would stay there with you guys and then go back home, sleep, and then go back to work. So it was kind of 24 hours, just you and your mom and work. um, and your mom at that point, she was spending time with you most of all, but also family because her mom and her brother and her sister all came down to go see you and take care of the house and help everything around and stuff like that. So that was really amazing of them to be able to come down and help with everything around the house. Um, and then on the uh, day that she passed away, which was August 7th, 2013, so almost 3 months after you were born. Well, like basically exactly 3 months after you were born. It was actually the day before you were released from the NICU. Was the day that she passed away. So she came. We actually were that day. We went to do some dialysis training, and then we went down to the cafeteria in the hospital to go visit you. But we were having lunch before we went up, and then we went up the elevator and we checked in at the NICU, And at that point, she started feeling a little faint. She was getting dizzy, and I asked her if she was okay. There was the lady, I forgot what was her responsibility. She was like a social worker. The social worker was there with us, and she was like a little worried too. She was like, "Are you okay? Do you need some water?" She's like, "I just need a rest. I'm a little tired." And she recovered, got up and walked, and we got in, washed our hands because it was this whole sterile situation where we were at. So we washed our hands, went in, and we went to go visit you where your crib was. And as we got into the room where you were, your mom fainted and she passed out. So we were at the hospital, and within seconds, the doctors were there helping her. So if there was any possibility of her being able to recover from what just happened, it was like the perfect place because there were like literally less than 10 seconds there were doctors there helping her, and within a couple minutes she was down in the ER room. So there was like no place better with better doctors or better care that she could have been, in my opinion. What ended up happening was that she had a pulmonary embolism. She did recover. Um, she did recover a couple times where she regained consciousness. I got to talk to her. She was very terrified and scared. She didn't know what was happening. The when we got down to the ER, they cleared out a room immediately and had her getting in there because they wanted to get vitals and things like that for her. And these, um, they got her fluids and everything and medicine. And then she passed out again, and they started CPR at this point because her heart started slowing. Her breathing started slowing, and they were able to revive her about like 10 minutes later again. And at that point, they wanted to put her on a respirator. So they wanted to put it like holding her throat, and her first instinct, because she didn't know what was going on, was to ask or say no, basically. And so they couldn't do anything without her approval. And I wasn't in the room at the time, so they went and got me. I was right outside of the room because they had like maybe 10, 15 people there working on her and making sure that she was staying stable. So they got me. I went in and talked to her. I told her kind of what was going on from what I knew at the time, and I told her that the doctors are trying to help her, and then she agreed with what the doctors were trying to do, and they started doing what they needed to do. She was completely compliant from that point on, and two or three. Oh, they asked me to go away from the room. Um, the last things we said to each other, which I think was amazing, we were able to say "I love you" to each other one last time, and we both said it to each other. We held each other's hand, and I walked out. And the next time I saw her, she wasn't she hadn't passed away yet, but she was like at that point where she was going to, because basically they tried to revive her for another hour and couldn't, and they told me basically at this point, whenever we stop working on her, her body isn't um, sustaining it herself, and if we were to able to revive her, she would have permanent brain damage. She'd basically be brain dead. And they said that they can't stop until she's dead, but that there's really no hope from this point. So they asked me to kind of give them permission to stop. And she actually had a advance directive, which basically already told me and told everybody in her family that if there was a situation like this where she would have to live on machines, or that she would be brain dead or anything like that, that she didn't want that. So based off of her wishes on her advance directive, I told the doctor, and from the doctor's advice, because the doctor said at this point there's not anything else we can do. we can keep on trying, and that they would keep on trying if I told them to, but that from what he sees and from his experience, there's nothing at this point that they can do. So I told them, okay, give it 5 more minutes. And they went for 5 more minutes. They weren't able to do anything, and basically at that point they stopped CPR. The only thing that they had was her oxygen level and her heart rate so that they can record time of death. And then at that point, it was me and my mom in the room with her. Everybody else left, and they left us alone with her. And actually, there was a nurse there to be able to record the exact time of death. And at that point, I was holding her hand, and she passed away. So that was kind of her last day. And like I said, she was on her last day, she was there to see you because you were the most important thing of her life, and she cared for you 100%. And there's actually a video of her talking about that before she had the C-section, and I definitely share that with you every year, so hopefully you remember that. If not, it's online all over the place. So if somebody sees this and wants her to know it, just know that that video exists and look it up. But after she passed away, a lot of people came together. The nurses from the Loma Linda Hospital actually got a care package and a lot of money for the funeral together, and other family members got diapers and blankets and a whole bunch of stuff. So I'd say like for the first year we were pretty set on baby supplies because everybody was so amazing and being able to help us be able to get through this hard time. At that point, actually, I remember talking to one of her friends, and she said that a few days before she passed away, that she was talking to her, and that Christin was telling her that she had like this feeling that she wouldn't get to see Penelope come home, and she shared that with me. So she never told that to me, but so you'd have to ask her to see the legitimacy of that, but she told that to me, so, and I believe her. And so she was like terrified of like what happening, and so that was a sad thing because she loved you so much and she wanted to be able to see you grow. We had plans on a lot of things to be able to do with you as you grew up, and I try to keep a lot of that alive, but also it's me and you now, so we get to make our decisions and make the best life that we can now. So that is the story of your mom, the best that I know it. And like I said, if you guys knew her, or if you have any questions for me that might kind of trigger something that I might remember, let me know in the comments right now, and I'll kind of respond to it, so that way Penelope has some way to access that. Also, if you did know her and want to say something in the comment section, go ahead and write that in comment section, some memories of her, because like I said, I knew her for the last part of her life. I didn't know her in her 20s, her teens, or her childhood. She passed away when she was 30, so I knew her from about 25 to 30, and 5 years. But those 5 years were amazing, and we truly loved each other, and we loved you, Penelope. Alright, so that is the story, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.